work with digitalization. So in my role, I develop tools based on LCA to make it operational in real life, in business to business and business to consumer. Just to know who I am, I'm also working, I'm part of the board of EPD International. I'm a national specialist when we define and develop the new standards, the product category rules for construction for buildings, construction works, and also at ISO level. And I also work with standardization with digitalization. And I also work as a verifier in different systems. And I also work in the technical committee in Norway. So we don't have to compete with each other. We can learn from each other. I think that is very important. EPD International, as it said in the name, it's international. So if each country will develop their own method, their own settings, or each region, it will create a mess. And what we would like to achieve is one system, a global system. Else we will create global barriers. So actually, all the LCA that is based, the basis for EPDs is global. It's based on international standards. So the EPD International is based on those global standards instead of national standards. And we are present all over the world, as you can see. So the idea is to have one EPD that is worldwide operational. And it's also for every kind of product. So it's not limited to a certain product. So the program operator, in this case, EPD International, has a lot of product category rules for different products. And since we cooperate with different parties, we create cost effectiveness, and we also, in the same way, we create the harmonization between these organizations. And I would like to say that EPD is a front runner when we're talking about digitalization of EPDs as well. This process with the EPD system is almost the same as in PEF. We start with the PCR, product category rules. We are then, based on these rules, you can say we're developing the EPDs, and if there is no PCR, you have to start up the work to develop that PCR to start with to make it possible to produce an EPD. And then we make a background LCA calculation, and then we transform that LCA to an EPD and make it as a communication product, so to say. And then it has to be a third party verified, and when it's verified, it can be published, and then it's a public available for everyone. And in EPD International, it has to be a digital EPD as well. And then we have the general program instruction, the Bible for everything that should cover this process. And here I think there is difference between the PEF approach and the EPD approach. And in fact is that the PEF approach is much better in my mind. And you know why? You know, because it's more precise. And it's not defined for one product, it's defined for every product. And you can't say if we will have a system where we should add up of everything and compare everything. You can't have different methodology. You have to have one methodology. That means that it has to be precise. This is just a revenue of what's happening in the past, and this is related to the EPD International system. And if we're looking at the on a general level, so this what is specific for EPD International that is that we have different types of verification, and we'll come back with this later on, also including process verification or and verification of tools. And then we have this digitalization as well. And then we have the methodology specification that is based on the ISO standard. And in the early start of this program, it was almost nothing in the text. And now it's expanded to 10 pages. Just to get a rough figure, and where you have the instruction for a PEF, it's 100 of pages. I mean, so it's at least a factor of 10, and that means it's more precise. And then we have another problem that within the system we have construction product as well. So there is one methodology for construction product and then for the rest of the products. And to my understanding, that is also what could be happening in the Eco Design Directive. So this is what we have to combat and have to have one uniform if we are going to be successful. And then we have this with the interoperability. In 1584, we have said that we will follow the ILCD approach, that is the same as in PEF. In the general program instruction, it doesn't say that we have to follow this approach, but since we digitalize everything, we're doing that anyway. So in fact, we are following within the general program instruction for every product, we have no interoperability problem. And then we have this hierarchy of different standards. So since we are based on ISO, we have an ISO standard that is 21930. That's the product category rules for construction product worldwide. And then we have the European version of that one. And that is a core PCR. That means it's applicable for every construction product. And then we have complementary PCR, CPCR. In Denmark, it's called PCR type A and B, and it's a German way of you name for core PCR and the CPCR. But it's the same approach. So if you are going to make an EPD for a construction product, you can use the core PCR. But if you do that, you're limited to a declared unit. It is per kilogram, per square meter, or something like that. If you would like to have a functional unit to make benchmarking within the product group possible, then you have to develop a CPCR. But you could also say, for instance, if we have problems to find data on electronics or explosive gases and things like that, then we can develop a CPCR as a complement to the core PCR that support and help us providing these EPDs. So this is a very nice structure in my mind, and it's also something that is with the core PCRs and the CPCRs that other products group can just copy that approach. And today we have a PCR, it's about 50 pages, focus on life cycle assessment methodology because the other is regulated in general program instructions. So I would like to say 50 pages, that's a lot. Could someone here, I see someone that could answer that actually. How many pages do the Danish study PCR? Linda? It's a non-existing, so it's, yeah, you have an extra 5, but in practice, it's just about nothing. So you use the core PCR and you don't have any further instructions in your system. But yeah.
Please wait for the microphone. We have people online.
Yeah, yeah. I can answer you pointed out that you have to follow existing PCRs, and we have that mutual recognition approach. Yeah, I know. We will talk about that later on then. Yeah. So that means that there is a lot of PCRs within EPD international system, and at least 100 categories are covered by these kind of PCRs. And just since we are PEF, it's benchmarking, and then I know in the standard said we are not allowed to make benchmarking if we use EPDs, but who cares? You have a result with a functional unit. Functional unit, that's, I mean, the point is that within that product group, it could be a limit product group, but you should compare the result. That's why we have this functional unit. So within this system, we have about 300 EPDs with functional unit, but a factor of 10 with the declared unit. So the majority of the EPDs is using the simple approach with a declared unit. And this tells us something about what is used. It's an informed comparison. I give an information from my supplier that I use in my context. So the goal with this kind of system, EPD system, is not exactly the same as PEF in my mind, at least. And then we have a number of EPDs. This is EPD International, more than 5,000 for construction products, and a factor of 10 lower for food. And I mean, that's huge difference. And this is a voluntary system. So in my mind, you can say on the construction sector, this is a success story. It's a voluntary system. It's not driven by regulation. And if you see the history and the development of these EPDs, that is based on the same standard, you can compare them, okay, calculated with the same methodology, different program operators. We now have 16,000 of these EPD based on European standard. And then we have additional EPDs that is called daughter EPDs in Sweden. In Denmark, I don't know what to call them. In Norway, they call it project EPDs. It's specific for a batch or a delivery to a construction site. So it's more precise. And in US, they have a huge amount of these kind of EPDs. So in all together, we have more than 100 EPDs based on exact same standards. So if we look at PEF, to my knowledge, there is no one public available so far. So here we can learn something. The EPD is a modular structure, so we have divided the life cycle in modules, product stage, use stage, end of life stage, and then we have the mysterious module D. And since we are in Denmark, it's sorry, it's dropping this one. So we have a problem with attributial and consequential LCA, and this is where we handle both systems. So that's for the LCA specialist. Everyone else, forget what I said. There is another indicator, however, that is perhaps the most important one. And since I'm part of the board, but as also part of the PCR and the PCR development for construction product, I have struggled so much for this one. What is it? It's the amount of specific data used in the EPD. If we are talking about public procurement and you use some data that for 99% is generic and you compete with another company, does it make sense? No. So in my mind, this is perhaps the most weak part of this system if you don't add the number of specific data used. And to be used in public procurement, in my mind, you should at least have 80 or 90% specific data. And if you even not include it in the EPD, it's like a black box. And I'm not so pleased about the PEF approach. They have noted this problem, but then they have combined it in equation. So yeah, it's not so clear what is the amount of specific data. We have different type of verification. The most common one, third-party verification, you have an approved individual verifier. And if you just have a few EPDs, this is the most common and most cost-effective way to have your EPDs verified. But if you have a company and you would like to have a lot of EPDs, and you would like to have a smooth process to publish them, you can have process certification, and that's involved accreditation. And that is quite complicated and costly. I work for DNV in Italy. We have other company here as well. No names. They also have this approach, but we are not so many. I think it's 3 or 4 bodies that offer this process certification. And now we have the pre-verified tool that simplify this process. And I think this is what we will see in future. In EPD Norway, about 80% of the EPDs are from tools, from simplified tools. This is the future. And then we have different approaches and different program operators. In EBU in Germany, they have employed their verifiers within their organization. Okay, thank you. And in this approach, EPD International, that it's market-based. So we have to compete with other verifiers. And to handle out the problem that where we have different operators, we have merged and have eco platform to join different approaches. I will jump a bit here. One of the major difference between PEF and EPD is that EPD is not for comparison, it's informed comparison. So what we have, the modular structure, A to C, we have this bookkeeping approach with the LCA. You can't time traveling, so to say, or you can't move impact or emission from one side cannot be moved to another one, and not in time. And then we have module D, and that's consequential LCA. And then we can have this time traveling and moving emission from one side to another side. But that's a separate module, separate information. Just about short about the digitalization. The new thing here is in EPD International, we have improved the EPD, so it was just one product per EPD, so we can digitalize it. I would have to jump to my last list here, because I'm running out of time. And within almost a month, it will be Christmas. And Santa Claus is not here today, but I have a wish list. So my first bullet point is that we should try to have one methodology. And of course, in my mind, that will be the one that is most successful, market-driven, and that is the one 1584. So why don't use that methodology as much as possible? Because it's working. Definitely, it's working. It's on the market, and the largest one. And then we have the digitalization. And now we have the opportunity with the Eco-Design Directive and the Product Pass to actually use the approach that is suggested for the building sector based on global standard that is called data template approach. It's a way to declare LCA and EPD data, not in the LCA community, but worldwide for all kinds of products. And that could be used, and we can have the same digital platform independent of EPDs or PEFs. It could be used exactly the same platform. And since we have problem with green claims, CBAM, and things like that, it's global problem. So to solve global problem, we have to have global methods. So the good thing with PEF and what is unique with PEF is the benchmarking. So if we regard the EPD as an informative input to the benchmarking, then we can also support eco-labeling type 1 and create a nice family where we have different parts and different responsibility and different communication products, type 1 to type 3, and we can use the same basic fact. So I don't know what the Santa Claus will give me, but I'm sure he will not fulfill this list. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. And again, we have time for questions. I'm sure that it would be okay to challenge Martin a bit, if anyone dares.
Yeah.
You know me, so I don't have to say that. Well, you mentioned some of the challenges that the EPD has, for instance, the enormous amount of generic data.
Yeah.
But then you also said that it's very super specific and mentioned a number of pages. However, our experience with using EPDs is that depending on the operator, you get a completely different result from the same time kind of product. So we have not been able, as of today at least, to set direct requirements linked to the EPDs. What we do use EPDs is like we use also the PEF-CR, so we use it in the first going through all the information that is possible to get. But the problem is that you need to dig into the EPDs and see what kind of is generic data, what extra factors have been put in and stuff like that. What do you think of that? What is your concern about this if you take an operator in Sweden, you get one result from the window to another operator in Finland?
As a verifier, I would say the problem is not the program operators, the LCA consultants, because there you find the difference. And they have personal opinions about things. And that means, in my mind, you have to have a more harmonized verification and third-party verification. And just because LCA is tricky and very much in detail, that doesn't say that it's impossible, because we are searching for a tool that is scientifically reliable. And this is the only solution in my mind. We have to go there. So what we have to do is face all these problems and to make them better. And as you said, we would like to have a lot of specific data, but now it's most generic data. So then we will compensate with this transparency to allow the market to be market-driven, because if you don't introduce that as an indicator, as we have done, this is the only proper program operator EPD in the international that has this as an indicator. But if you introduce it, I mean, when you have the companies, and what? Do I only have 10% specific data? Yes. And how should I achieve a better value? You have to ask your suppliers. So it's market driven. So in the long run, I'm sure that all these problems will be handled, but I can't solve them and you can't solve them, but together could we solve them? And if you can use this as a decision support, not only for EPDs, but for type 1, then we are on the same track and we have to help each other. So I just see opportunities.
Thank you. Maybe the last one, if any. Otherwise, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Because as you know, we also know EPDs, and we're quite keen on the heavy data load and, let's say, the validity of an EPD. But how do you see, compared to, for instance, the eco labels, the PEF, maybe also the eco design? How do you see communication-wise? How is EPD relevant for consumers? Or are you thinking about making kind of system there for an easier understanding for the consumer?
Yeah, in Sweden we have now a mandatory declaration for all new buildings. It's a declaration, and then we will start learning about how to calculate things, and then we have a limit value. So it's very easy to understand. If you have a building with a certain amount of GBPs, you're out of the market. And are you below that value, you're on the market. So you have to achieve that one. It's very easy to communicate. So yeah, and then also in the Swedish system, it's a suggestion to a new law, this with the limit values. So I hope that it will be a real law in future.
But you won't go into A, B, C, or gold, silver, anything like that? So
it's one limit value per building type.
Okay.
So, but for consumer goods, I'm sure that we will have this kind of ABC as well, or sometimes one on-off is good enough. And in this case, I think on-off is good enough.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you so much. Well, different methods and standards, and we will talk about another method and standard. But first, we have a short break until 11:30.